You missed the group picture.
Oh, no, really? Oh.
We might have to retake, we probably should retake it next
We can
week.
just do it again.
I'm not wearing t-shirts and shorts and hey dudes.
Okay, guys.
Sorry, my dog was being very naughty as I was trying to leave.
I call to order the regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, Monday, February 13th, 2023. Please rise, 7 o'clock. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mount Pleasant City Commission recognizes the Anishinaabe, whose ancestral lands the city stands upon today. We acknowledge the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe and recognize that the three bands of Ojibwe, Saginaw, Black River, and Swan Creek, have resided on this land for over 200 years. Our acknowledgement of the full history of the tribe and our commitment to be good stewards of these ancestral lands are an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those ancestors who came before us. We give thanks to the generous care with which the Anishinaabe and those members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan have given and continue to give to this land and to our community. Clerk, please take the roll.
Commissioner Asman.
Here.
Commissioner Bush.
Here.
Commissioner Chapman.
Here.
Commissioner Ake.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wingard.
Here.
Vice Mayor Alsteiger.
Here.
Mayor Perschbacher.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Since we have a quorum, we will continue with the meeting. Right now, we have proclamations and presentations, and we have an introduction of a new water distribution supervisor and a new water distribution operator.
Good evening, Commissioners. I've got a couple of employees here that I'd like to introduce tonight, one new and one that's been with us for quite some time. First off, we've got a promotion of Andy Keebaugh. He was promoted December 4th of last year. He actually hired in June of 1998 as a seasonal maintenance worker. In March of 2004, he was hired as a full-time water system operator, and he transferred to the street department as a street maintenance specialist in April of 2018. He then returned to the water department in April of 2020 as a water distribution operator. Andy currently holds a Michigan Eagle F3 and S1 license. I'd like to welcome Andy Keebaugh into his new role as the water distribution supervisor.
Thank you.
And then the new employee, Travis McAllister, he started with us January 30th. He previously worked for the city of Flint as a sewer equipment operator from 2010 to 2019. He worked as a utilities operator for the city of Saginaw from 2019 to 2022. He had a brief position with the village of Edmore as a DPW laborer in 2022, and then took a position as a driver for Elrose Steel. He currently holds a Michigan Eagle S3 license. Please welcome Travis McAllister.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the city. At this time, we're going to move to additions or deletions to the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? I am going to request that the recess before work session be moved to after the work session. And I'm also going to ask that the wording for line item 16 be changed to Closed session to consult with the city attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with pending litigation in the city of Mount Pleasant versus Lane et al., case number 23-18394-AW, for the reason that an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the city. Okay. Are there any other additions or deletions? I will entertain a motion to accept the agenda as changed.
I move.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. At this time, we have public input on agenda items. If you wish to speak about something on the agenda, you may come to the podium. You will be given 5 minutes. You'll ask to state your name and your address. These are on agenda items. Understand that if you are here for the public hearings that we will have later today, you can also speak at that time. If you're joining us by Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature or the *9 if you're joining Zoom by phone. You'll be brought into the meeting, asked to state your name and address, and you'll be given 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak at this time? Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
No raised hands.
I see no one in the audience rushing to the podium, so we will close the public input. And we'll move on to receipts of petitions and communications. Manager DeSense.
Receipt of petitions and communications this evening includes monthly report on police-related citizen complaints, minutes of the Airport Joint Operations and Management Board, November, minutes of the Parks and Recreation Commission, November, minutes of the Planning Commission, January.
All right, we'll move on to consent items. Are there any consent items that the commission would like to have moved into the regular meeting? Seeing none, Manager DeSense, please review the consent items.
Consent items includes approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held January 23rd, 2023, approval of the minutes from the closed session held January 23rd, 2023, consider resolution in support of final approval of temporary traffic control order number 3-2023, which places no parking signs on the east side of Crapo Street between High and Broadway. Consider resolution authorizing Deputy Public Works Director Tim Middleton to execute Clean Water State Revolving Fund contract documents. Consider resolution authorizing City Manager to sign grant agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation, and consider approval of payrolls and warrants.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent items.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. We're going to move on to our first public hearing. Our first public hearing is on the request to create an obsolete property rehabilitation act, otherwise known as OPRA, district to include the Mission Pickard DDA boundary, and consider approval of the resolution. Manager DeSense.
City staff is asking the City Commission to consider the establishment of an OPRA district within the Mission Pickard DDA boundary. The request also comes following support from the Michigan Pickard DDA Board. The establishment of this district is similar to action previously taken by the City Commission in April 2021, where an OPRA district was established in the downtown DDA. The OPRA district will allow for property owners to seek a tax abatement on new development within the district. Any request to do so would need to seek City Commission approval. The abatement would freeze the taxable value at the current level prior to any redevelopment for a period set by the City Commission not to exceed 12 years.
All right, at this time, we're going to open this public hearing. If you wish to step forward to speak about the OPRA district, you will be asked to come to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll be given 5 minutes. If you wish to speak on the OPRA public hearing and you're joining us by Zoom, you may use this raised hand feature or *9. Once you are let into the meeting, you will be asked to state your name and address and be given 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this, the public hearing? Is there anyone on Zoom?
No raised hands.
Are there any emails?
No, there are not.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing, and when we move into discussion among the commission, are there any questions that the commission would like to ask staff to clarify any of the information we were given? Commissioner Eke?
I'm curious about the decision to freeze this taxable value up to 12 years. How did we arrive at 12 years? Maybe not a decade or a decade and a half?
Any of the requests would come before the city commission, and the city commission has the ability by statute to freeze the taxable values up to a maximum of 12 years. So it could be less, I believe, to a minimum of 6 years. Am I correct on that? I'm sorry, 1 year. So it does allow for the freezing of taxable value from 1 year to 12 years.
So the city commission has the discretion.
That's correct.
That's what I want to know.
Yep, it would be discretionary and on a per case basis as
Okay,
well.
okay.
Tonight's action would be just on the establishment allowing such requests to come forward. And then as requests come forward, city commission could consider any sort of period of time up to 12 years.
Thank you.
Question for, with the previous district that was established in 2021, have there been any requests or approved requests for the other Oprah district that was created? I'm seeing some shaking heads out in the audience.
The answer is no. Established in 2021, fairly new. I think it's certainly worth giving a bit of time, but at this point, no, we don't have any.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Asman?
Two questions. One, like, define rehabilitation of the property, I guess, is what I was curious about. And then also, if so, how does that play into the current ordinance?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can call up our downtown development director, Michelle Sponseller, she knows more about Oprah districts than I do and can get into more of the technical questions.
So the short version to that is the state defines what rehabilitation is. I don't have that to memory. I could certainly provide that to you, but it is very specific. Also, the definition of a blight, it's very similar to the definition used in Brownfield, for example.
How about the second part? How does that
sorry.
play into the, I mean, are we talking parking lot improvements, or are we talking?
It's
No, parking lots would not be part of this. For the building only, and to be very clear, there is already an established Oprah policy that the city adopted about 2.5 years ago. So there's very specific criteria in order to get the tax abatement.
Okay, am I missing something? But how does it play into the current ordinance? Does it affect it at all with?
Those who apply still have to meet the zoning code, is that the question?
Yeah.
Yes, they do still have to meet the zoning code, correct.
Thank you. Sorry, should have been more specific.
That's all right, I just wanted to make sure we were talking
Yep.
apples to apples.
Okay, Commissioner Bush?
So if I translate into very simple terms, does that basically mean that the property owners aren't paying taxes on the value that they add through the development until X
Yes,
period? Okay.
Correct. Well put.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'd like to add that this has been, this is always an interesting thing, trying to help businesses improve their area without, while giving them the incentive to do it. I appreciate the staff putting together all of this. I got to tell you, I did not read the legal description. Oh, it's this. There's no spaces between these words, and it's like 5 pages. It's because it's covering the whole area, so it's quite a bit. But I understood what we were doing because you guys gave us a great map of it. I hope that there are businesses out there that take advantage of this and improve their properties so that everyone gets a good win out of this. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I move that we support a adoption of an Oprah. Oh, wait, guess we need to set about a time limit though, right?
No.
No, we don't.
No,
We can
we do
oh,
that
okay.
case by case.
Case by case? Okay, all right, then I would like to move towards an establishment of an OPR district for the Mission Pickard DDA boundary.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We will take a roll call vote with this. Clerk?
Commissioner Wingard,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Eke,
Yes.
Commissioner Asman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alsteiger,
Yes.
Mayor Perschbacher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we will move on to our second public hearing. The second public hearing is on the ordinance to amend Chapter 116 subsection 03B12 of Title 11, Business Regulations of the City's Code entitled Electric Scooters and Skateboards. Manager Sense.
In 2022, the City Commission adopted an ordinance to regulate e-scooter companies. Since the adoption of the ordinance, some of the companies have notified staff of issues related to the ordinance. In particular, the ordinance requires companies to remove the units from the public rights-of-way between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. daily. This requirement is problematic as the companies are not able to do this. The units are designed to remain in the public right-of-way in a manner that does not conflict with vehicle or pedestrian traffic. The City Commission is asked to consider an ordinance amendment that would remove the requirement previously stated. Instead, units would be placed in a standing and available position that does not interfere with vehicle or pedestrian traffic. It would also give ultimate discretion to the public safety director and his or her designee for areas of placement within the city where perhaps we don't want scooters. If we were to find some of these units that meet the letter of the ordinance, but just are not working, they're in the way in some way, or they become a nuisance, ultimately the public safety director would have the discretion to be able to ask the companies to remove those units from that area.
All right, I will now open the public hearing. At this time, if you have something to speak on for the electric scooter and skateboard changes, you may come to the podium. You'll be given 5 minutes. You'll be asked to state your name and your address. If you're joining us by Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature or *9 if you're joining Zoom by phone. Once you're let into the meeting, you'll be asked to state your name and address, and you'll be given 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this public hearing? Is there anyone in Zoom?
No raised hands.
Are there any emails?
No, there are not.
All right, at this time, I will close the public hearing. If the City Commission has any questions for clarifying, Commissioner Eke?
So since this responsibility for managing the placement, of the scooters has now been designated to the Director of Public Safety's unit, I would like to ask the Director of Public Safety, one, if he and his unit have considered particular locations for the placement of the scooters, and two, is he willing to undertake this? Yeah, because if I walk down somewhere and I stumble on one of those, I'm calling you.
I get it. I completely understand. We haven't identified specific areas. We're waiting until the scooter company comes in. They have a target base that they're trying to entice to use these scooters. Mm-hmm. So it will be, they will say something to the effect of, we would like to place them here, and we'll go out and look at it and evaluate it at that time. And then if there's an issue, we'll give alternatives. Okay. Or if there can't be alternatives, it just can't go there if it isn't safe or a good place to do it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Commissioner Wingard.
Just wanted to define, neatly placing them in the right of way. Is there going to be, are we talking about a I mean, they're electric scooters, though, they'll have to charge at some point, I imagine, so the company would be responsible for installing like charging outlets that would be like, I'm assuming, like subset off the sidewalk or something, like placed around there, like kind of what that would look like.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that these outfits tend to work. One is for the scooters to be in kind of a upright standing position off to the side, off the sidewalk, where you can just grab them off the sidewalk and you can grab one and utilize it. I understand that those units are charged on an as-needed basis. They have technology in them which communicates back to a computer which can say, all right, let's just say the one right outside of City Hall needs to be charged, and then a local operator can go out there and charge it. There are other companies that have more like a sort of hub where ideally you return them. So Spin, for instance, is one of those companies that I know of where they have bicycles that you can rent and utilize in this fashion, but you have to take it back to one of those stations, and those stations themselves also have recharging capabilities as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the changes as presented and a second. All those, we need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Asman,
Yes.
Commissioner Eke,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman,
Yes.
Commissioner Wingard,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alsager,
Yes.
Mayor Perschbacher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, now we're moving on to new business. And number 14, we are going to hand the mic over to Vice Mayor Alsager.
Okay, thank you. We've kind of held on to this application for an individual to join the Parks and Rec Board that happened towards the end of 2022. And then as we were ready to approve it in January, we had to reform our committees, so we had to wait a bit on it. But now that we're back to the same appointments committee that we had before, what we want to bring to you today is to add to the ranks of the Parks and Recreation Board, Kristen Lalonde. And she comes to us with some good credentials. She is a former city commissioner herself, and it's just nice that she wants to jump back into the fray as a board member. So that's what we are recommending, Kristen Lalonde for the Parks and Rec Board.
Does the commission have any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the recommendation of Kristen Lalonde to the board.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Welcome, Kristen, back to the city. We're going to move on to announcements on city-related issues and new business. This is the time where the City Commission announces activities or events that they know of, or can ask the staff to look at certain things that they're interested in. This is also time where the staff can interject information. Does anybody have anything to add? Maureen?
It is Black History Month, and CMU has a number of activities related to Black History Month. There's also a CMU International Film Festival, and it is open to the community. So this is our community, and CMU is part of this community. So let's go.
Yes, the CMU Film Festival starts on Wednesday.
Yes.
And there are 3 locations, one on campus at the Oberman Auditorium, there's a location at Broadway Theater and Celebration Cinema. The tickets are $5 a piece. There are some amazing movies out there. Is there anything else anybody else would like to say? No? Okay, we're going to move on to public comment on agenda and non-agenda items. At this time, we'll open the floor to the public. If you'd like to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, you may step to the podium, state your name and address, and I will give you 5 minutes to speak. will also, if you are on Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature or *9 if you're joining us by phone. You'll be moved into the meeting and asked to state your name and address before you speak, and you'll be given 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward and speak? This is such a lively crowd. Anybody on Zoom?
No raised hands.
Are there any emails?
No, there are not.
Okay. Not seeing anyone come forward, because we're going to do a recess, and we've already just blown through 25 minutes, we are going to move right into the work session. This is a presentation and discussion of the Neighborhood Enterprise Zone.
I'll just need 1 minute for the presentation.
No problem, take your time.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. I'm here today to provide you with an update regarding the city's progress on advancing the previously identified housing goals. And we'll be focusing the discussion on how the city could approach neighborhood enterprise zones, NEZs, based on the latest housing data that our team has compiled. So the slide here provides you with a summary of the 3 main housing tactics that the City Commission had discussed for 2023. As a reminder, the main goal is to address the housing market demands of our community, including home ownership opportunities. Tactic 3 focuses on the implementation of incentives to stimulate the conversion of rental housing to owner-occupied housing. Since the City Commission had previously decided to put a pause on restituting the incentive program to convert rental licenses, our team decided to bring the next topic, NEZs, as the main discussion item for today's agenda. So before discussing NEZs, our team would like to make a clarification to the Commission regarding the data on ownership rates in the city. The goal to incentivize more owner-occupied housing was based on the understanding that the city had a very low owner-occupancy rate. The 2019 housing report issued by the Planning Department talked about an owner-occupancy rate of 35%. However, I just want to clarify that such percentage was based on the number of units. Analysis conducted in the past month shows an owner-occupancy rate of approximately 70% when looking at the number of lots that do not have a rental license, and the majority of which have a primary residence exemption. So why should we look at number of lots instead of number of units? Well, take a look at this chart, which shows the number of lots and number of units that the city currently has within each housing typology. There are more units within multifamily complexes in Mount Pleasant than in single-family homes. Because of that, and because most complexes target student populations and are therefore comprised of rental units, the ownership by unit data gets skewed. So the housing report also did point out how owner occupancy rates are not evenly distributed across building types. So here you can see that while 75% of single-family homes have a principal residence exemption, only 8% of multi-unit complexes and 13% of duplexes are owner-occupied. To me, this actually questions if the city should focus on increasing owner occupancy rates of different building types, such as those identified in our master plan as the missing middle housing typologies, and does not necessarily represent a general homeownership issue. And just so everyone is on the same page, when we refer to missing middle housing, we're referring to the range of housing types that fit between single-family detached homes, as you can see here on the slide, and mid to high-rise apartment buildings. It does not always correlate with a specific income bracket, So in other words, it's not synonym of affordable housing. Mid and middle housing types provide an opportunity to fill the gap in the housing market, as not everyone is a student looking to rent a unit in an apartment complex or someone that actually wants to own a single-family home with a yard. So all that said, how can NEZs help with this? Neighborhood Enterprise Zone is a program administered by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. It was established by Public Act in 1992 to provide a tax incentive for the development and rehabilitation of housing. The state's objectives with this program are two. First, is spur the development and rehabilitation of housing in communities where it may not otherwise occur. And two, encourage owner-occupied housing and new investment in communities. So there are three types of facilities that are eligible for an NEZ certificate: new facilities, rehabs, and homestead facilities, which generally target lower density building types, from single-family homes to duplexes, in the case of new and the homestead facilities program. And in case of rehabs, it does allow for buildings with a maximum of 8 units, so a small apartment building. So, sorry, just to get back to the chart, I'm just gonna touch on some crucial points here. Only new facilities and homestead facilities require owner occupancy, except that new mixed-use buildings in downtown areas, they can't be entirely occupied by rentals. An example that we have is right next door with Broadway Lofts that got the NEZ certificate in the past, as you know. Rehabs, they also allow for all units to be rentals. Regarding the tax break versus the required improvement amount, generally speaking, the homestead option provides the greatest benefit to the owner, as it requires the smallest improvement amount. And then in order for buildings to be eligible for NEZ certificates, they must be located within an area mapped as an NEZ, therefore the reason for us to be speaking today. Cities can designate several areas as NEZs. However, each must be comprised of at least 10 contiguous parcels. So this is to avoid doing parcel by parcel designation, except for in downtown areas that you could do that, like Broadway Lofts. So the total acreage cannot exceed 15% of the city's land. And then for homestead option, they are limited to just 10% of the land. And as I said, new mixed-use buildings are an exemption for that and can be done on a project-by-project basis. So to better illustrate how the program works, we built a couple of scenarios that I'll go through in the next couple of slides. So this first example here is a new facility, a duplex, which is half owner-occupied. It illustrates a potential tax reduction of approximately $1,700 a year for the renter-occupied unit and $1,300 for the owner-occupied unit. Since the minimum term of the program is 6 years, this is roughly a total of $10,000 in tax reduction for the renter-occupied and almost $8,000 in tax reduction for the owner-occupied unit. The new facility NEZ type could be a tool to incentivize redevelopment and infill development in the city, mostly of single and two-family homes. It could encourage new duplexes to have at least one unit being owner-occupied, and I'm sure you remember that that is something that the zoning ordinance used to require, and we remove it. Condos, they can also take advantage of this incentive and could include more than 2 units. So an example of that could be if you have an attached building with 4 units, each one of them, if it's a condo, they also could take advantage of this program. So the next one is an example of a new mixed-use building in a downtown area with 10 rental units. It illustrates a potential tax reduction of approximately $7,000 a year. With a minimum term of 6 years, this is roughly $42,000 in tax reduction. The new mixed-use facility NEZ type could be a tool to incentivize mixed-use development in downtown areas, offering an opportunity to diversify the portfolio of types of apartments that the city has to offer for populations beyond students, such as young professionals looking to rent within housing that is not located within student housing complexes. The next one is the rehab type. So here you can see an illustration of a townhouse with 3 rental units. It illustrates a potential tax reduction of approximately $900 per year per unit if the property owner invests $15,000 in improvements. Since the minimum term is 6 years, let's just do some math here. This is roughly approximately $6,000 in tax reduction, which does not enable the investment to be paid over time, unfortunately. So the rehab program is one that provides the least amount of benefits to the property owner, and therefore a greater term may be necessary to be financially feasible. On another note, rehabs require a lower investment amount, $10,000 instead of $15,000, if the unit is owner-occupied. So even though it doesn't require buildings to be owner-occupied, it does have that incentive in another way, to kind of encourage owner occupancy. So that said, rehab NEZ types could provide an incentive to existing properties to receive improvements, but they need to be carefully designed in order to be feasible. This is the type that can mostly accommodate the missing middle housing typologies, as it allows for up to 8 units. So things like triplexes, fourplexes could be typologies that could take advantage of it, especially here in the downtown area of Mount Pleasant. The last one that I have is the homestead facility. This one illustrates a potential tax reduction of approximately $1,200 a year for a commitment that the owner invests only $500 in improvements in the first 3 years once the term of the certificate starts. So this is kind of a promise-based one, and it only requires $500. Since the minimum term is 6 years, you are seeing approximately $7,000 tax reduction when only guaranteeing the $500 investment in the property. All that said, the homestead NEZ type seems to be the one that offers the greatest benefit to the homeowner, and so it should probably be carefully mapped as an option. So we wouldn't want to map everywhere in the city, but really where we see the amount of improvements or improvements in general being needed, right? So one may argue, however, that while we only require $500, the minimum commitment, with this minimum commitment amount being small, the tax reduction can enable homeowners to generate wealth over time, which could lead to more improvements in the city. So I think using data such as low income information, things like that, could help us in the mapping process, if you think that that's a good approach. So after going through this exercise, and I'm almost done in my presentation, we had some internal discussions with our city's Division of Financial Services and McKenna Consultants, and we all concluded that NEZs may not be an effective tool to meaningfully incentivize new home ownership or encourage residential rental units to become owner-occupied, but we still feel that it's a valuable tool to achieve these 3 goals here. So first one, assist income-restricted individuals improve their homes. 2, encourage the construction and improvement of missing middle housing typologies, which could potentially create more owner occupancy within that type of buildings. And last, we can continue to use it as a tool to incentivize more mixed-use development, not just here in the downtown area, but also along Mission Street. So based on the discussion information presented, we would like to ask if the City Commission is comfortable with staff taking this concept as NEZs and then implement as described here in the slide. So our next task, if that's something you're interested, we will be looking into different neighborhoods in the city and picking really small targeted areas to test the program for the next year. And also, of course, draft an NEZ policy in this a similar way that you have the Oprah and pilot, and then bring it back to you. But then once there is any property interested, they will still need to come back to you to see how many years you're going to provide. The minimum is 6 years and maximum is, I believe, 15 years. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, either me, Heather, Marianne, or Bill can assist. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manuela.
Are there any questions? I'd like to ask, what is considered, is there a scope of understanding of what is considered an improvement?
Improvement. That's a good question. I didn't tackle that. So it has to be something done to the building. Okay. It really can be anything, but it cannot be anything on the site. So including the tax reduction, it's only applicable to the structure and not the property, in the same way that the improvements would be required to be on the structure.
Okay, so like new windows,
New windows could, yeah.
okay, or siding.
Yeah.
What about like painting the house itself?
I believe so.
Okay.
Painting, yeah.
Or painting any can there be outbuildings that can be like
Right,
re-sided or redone? That would be part of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
But
very.
you're not adding something new?
I think you could add a porch and include that as an improvement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Eke?
Actually, I'm glad that you asked that because I was wondering whether you have established some criteria for determining what this improvement might look like. Somebody interested in this, what might be the guideline, especially if they are going to make improvement, so that we're not, trying to figure out what it is. Have you already established one, or are you going to create one eventually that somebody can pick up and say, or place that on a website saying, these are, the guidelines for what constitutes improvement?
That's a very good suggestion, and I believe it's something that we could tackle. I know that some parts of the program cannot be modified by the local government units, such as the minimum improvement amount. But the types of improvements, I believe it's something we can provide guidelines for, and we have the NRU work that we do, neighborhood. What's the resource unit? Yeah. The grant program for MISHDA is Neighborhood Enhancement Program. Yeah, NEP. So the NEP work is, for that particular program from MISHDA, they do classify improvements, things that are done to the front facade of the building, so you can actually see that from the streetscape. So if that's something that you're interested in, we could potentially tailor it to that. And as well as improvements that are to the betterment of the building itself. So for energy efficiency, things like that. I believe it's something that we could do.
I think that would help. I think it would help, there are cities that have maybe ordinances or guidelines for what to do with historical buildings, for instance, right? So, I think that is important, especially because people, whoever is looking at this, depending on who it is, might not really know exactly where to go to find the document that delineates what these improvements are. But if the city is saying this is what the city wants, and these are the things that constitute improvements in accordance with the state or the federal guidelines, I do believe that it is important for us to develop that document, that people can then either pick up or just simply click on and then see what they need to do.
So people are well informed as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the presentation.
Yes. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Wingard?
Yeah, as far as next step you were looking at was proposing small targeted areas within different neighborhoods. Thoughts on like how you would like figure out which neighborhoods would get this? I mean, even if it's just a test run, any neighborhood would benefit from a potential tax advantage on this. So I guess what would be your process for looking at that?
Yeah, I thank you for the question, because I think direction from you today would just make my job easier, because then I can put all those layers together. But some thoughts that we did have, as you can see here in this map, we circled the west neighborhood and then north and south central as the bigger neighborhoods that we'll be looking at. And with the idea that we're looking at older building stock. So I think the rehab option, if tailored in a way that it still makes sense, I think could be really valuable for older buildings, right? So then we will be encouraging improvements to older typologies. And then within those areas, I believe that income levels can also be something we put on top. So we will be layering different elements in GIS and just to kind of figure it out, the particular areas that we would be targeting. And then I think another one will be the variety of the building stock. So if we look at block by block, blocks that are more diverse in typology. So instead of picking a block that just has single family homes, we will be picking a block that has single family duplexes, maybe triplexes, fourplexes, to try to get into the missing middle housing typologies as I put in my presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? So as the commission, what the staff is looking for is for direction from us on whether or not we would like them to proceed forward. What is our thoughts?
I would support moving forward.
Okay, Commissioner Asman?
Not quite sure yet.
Not sure, okay. Commissioner Wingard?
I think I'd be interested in seeing more of this. I think it seems like a good way to definitely get diversity of housing and everything, just from single family lots and everything, more density. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing more.
Commissioner Bush?
I agree with the need to look at some of these older housing units, because we do have a lack of developmental land here within the city limits, and so focusing on helping rehab some of these older buildings we can't just keep building new buildings. We got to look at some of the older ones too.
Okay.
And I'd like to add my house is 150 years old this year. No coincidence at all.
Okay. Commissioner Chapman?
You know, I agree with a lot of that. It is hard because, you know, especially working in the nonprofit field, we have a lot of nonprofits that don't pay taxes, right? And I work, and so it's hard because I just wonder how this then affects our budget, right? Because don't get me wrong, I'd love to have. I mean, I look at this and say 4,450. That's about how much I pay. If it can go down to 3,300, I'll spend $500, right? And so if we target these neighborhoods, how then does it affect our city budget with? And again, I'm all for it, but there's also a cost to it, right?
Well, I believe that it doesn't lower the taxes, it just doesn't increase.
So it says the annual tax
More or less.
before it looks like $1,200 for.
So depending on the facility type, so for new facilities and homestead,
Yeah.
it's basically half of the taxes for the structure itself. And then there's a phasing out approach. So before the certificate expires, the discount gets smaller until it expires. But with rehabs, it is a freeze situation. So the improvements is just not going to increase your taxes. That's why that program requires more years for the term in order for it to be feasible. The other ones can be quite an incentive.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to, instead of mapping the 15% that we are allowed to by the state, start small, see what the uptake is, and then see if the results are, valuable, and add it to the goals that the commission has, and then evaluate if we want to map more areas in the future. But one thing that our team did discuss is once you map something like this, it's really hard to remove it, right? So that's why we have to be careful. And I think Marianne may be on Zoom in case she wants to tackle more on the concerns about how it could affect the city's budget.
I just wanted to add that Commissioner Chapman is correct that for a $500 investment, it's not going to raise the value of your home for a $500 putting a new door on or putting shutters on or painting, but it will have your current taxes, the amount that you pay for the city and the county, be cut in half. The rest of it, according to the law, does not get cut in half, but the city and county taxes would be cut in half by making a $500 investment. And as Manuela indicated, that would be for a term of 6 years, but we have to be very careful about the amount of investment and the amount of return we're getting on that investment and the cost to the city budget.
Okay.
And I would add that these are very complicated tax calculations. We've given you the highest level of overview, but they are very intricate calculations for each type and how they're phased out and which part you pay taxes on and which part you don't. But we can manage that.
So what is your thoughts on this then?
Well, for me, I think new development's important. I mean, to rehab old things. I'm just not sure about homestead. I mean, because it just does. It decreases our tax even more. But I think it's a great idea to, especially to invest into infrastructure in our community. It's huge. I think rehabilitated structures would be very helpful for our community. So. I don't know.
You see both sides.
I support a lot of it,
Yeah.
but I also know that there's a cost to it.
Yeah.
There is a possibility to not offer the 3 facility types. So we could map quite the opposite example, but one city in the state, I believe, was Kalamazoo, mapped only the homestead. So in what you're saying, maybe we don't map the homestead, but provide the new and the rehab option. That's something that we could do. Our lawyers said that it's something we could tailor in the program.
Okay.
And if everybody else disagrees with me, that's okay.
Well, we're just looking at what
Sure.
direction do we want the staff to go? Do we want them to further investigate this, look at going a little further and understanding where they'd want to map this out at? The final decision has not been made yet.
Sure.
Would it be too much to actually maybe see some numbers, even if they're vague approximations as to, well, if we allow for 5% to be applied to the home, NEZ to the homestead designation, we would lose, how many thousands of dollars in tax revenue, just very, very general, just so that we can kind of crunch the numbers. Would
Yeah.
that be possible?
Yeah.
Okay. Vice Mayor Elsager?
I support continued study on it.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like, for the most part, we all support the continued study
Okay.
on this. I would also like to, like Commissioner Bush said, we would like to get some little scenarios. If we did this and moved it in this direction, what would that look like for the city? If we did this, what would it look like for the city?
Okay. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
May I add something?
Yes.
Is it possible to find some data, from similar cities? It's sort of a comparative, study. It doesn't have to be big. I like comparative, studies.
Yeah.
Because I want to see what's going on. You mentioned Kalamazoo, and I like Kalamazoo, but I don't know how, it might compare with us.
Yeah, we can definitely do something like that. I don't know if you wanted to see numbers from them, which could be a little bit harder, but we can tell, general information about how the NEZ program went in different cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Advantages or disadvantages, you decide. But I think that it would be interesting because we have talked about this, in the past. You've brought the study back to us, a short report back to us. I would like us to move a little bit, just beyond just talking about it. What is possible? And then let's go. We all acknowledge that there is housing problem in this place. So, let's see what is possible.
Sounds good.
I have just one question that just popped in my mind. You said that it would be the city taxes and the county taxes. Would there have to be an approval from the county for us to do something like this?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Yeah. Because the state basically provides the NEZ as an option for local units that they identify, and there's a big list of cities in the state that could take advantage of this program, including Mount Pleasant. And I haven't seen any language that the county will need to wait in. Yeah.
Okay. That's the only question that I have, but
Okay.
it sounds like we are okay with you moving forward on the study and bringing us more information.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, before we go to our first recess, I'm going to entertain 2 motions for closed session. On your dais, you have the new language for the first closed session, and then I will have to have a motion for the second closed session. And it will be a roll call vote.
I move that we have a closed session to consult with the city attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with pending litigation in City of Mount Pleasant versus Lang et al., case number, for the reason that an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the city.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Eke,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman,
Yes.
Commissioner Wingert,
Yes.
Commissioner Asman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alsager,
Yes.
Mayor Perschbacher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, now I'm going to entertain a motion for the second closed session.
I don't have the language, but I move for a second closed session.
Is there a second?
I'll
I think
second.
we have to have the full language.
We have to have the full language. It would be
Okay.
number
Here, I got it.
17 on the agenda.
I move to consider a closed session pursuant to subsection 8C of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the strategy and negotiation sessions connected with negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement.
Is there a second?
My second, okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Asman,
Yes.
Commissioner Eke,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman,
Yes.
Commissioner Wingert,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Alsager,
Yes.
Mayor Perschbacher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. At this time, we will take a 10-minute recess because we will be going into closed session right after our recess. I'm going to ask all public to leave. Thank you.